15th century, European nations were completely obsessed with a specific set of luxury goods from Asia. They desperately wanted silk, porcelain, and precious spices from India and China, and they needed a reliable way to get them. Take a look at this antique parchment map of Europe, Africa, and Asia from the era. To move those goods across that massive stretch of land, merchants had to use the Silk Road. It was a brutal journey. The routes were highly dangerous, frequently blocked by hostile empires, and subject to crushing taxes at every border. This created a severe economic bottleneck. European monarchs were bleeding money and began frantically searching for a direct sea route to India to bypass the land blockades entirely. Governments funded oceanic exploration as a pragmatic, high-stakes mission to repair this broken European supply chain. Enter an Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus. He approached the royal courts of Europe with a radical pitch. Instead of sailing east around Africa, he could reach the Asian markets by sailing directly west across the Atlantic Ocean. There was a massive flaw. Columbus vastly underestimated the Earth's circumference, basing his voyage on mathematical models that made the planet look significantly smaller. Because of this, he had absolutely no idea that an enormous, completely undocumented continent was sitting perfectly in the middle of his proposed sea route. Despite rejections from Portugal, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain eventually took the financial risk. They sponsored his journey and provided him with 3 soon-to-be legendary ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. The Crown authorized the voyage on deeply flawed math. Based on his own numbers, Columbus was guaranteed to never reach his intended destination. On August 3, 1492, Columbus and a crew of about 90 men departed from Spain. As they sailed deep into the uncharted Atlantic, weeks turned into agonizing months with absolutely nothing but dark water on the horizon. Terror began to spread among the sailors. They were sailing entirely off the map, and their vital supplies of food and fresh water were rapidly running out. The crew reached the absolute verge of a mutiny. To prevent an uprising, Columbus began underreporting the distance they had covered, essentially forging his records to keep the men calm and convince them they were closer to home than they actually were. By manufacturing this false sense of security, he neutralized the crew's panic and successfully pushed the expedition forward long after their actual supplies and stamina should have forced a retreat. Finally, at 2 a.m. on October 12th, a lookout sailor on the Pinta named Rodrigo de Triana spotted a white cliff illuminated by the moonlight. They had landed on a beautiful island in the modern-day Bahamas. Columbus stepped onto the shore, planted the Spanish flag in the sand, and claimed the territory for Spain under the name San Salvador. Because his original mission was to find a route to India, Columbus stubbornly interpreted the landscape through the lens of his flawed math. He mistakenly assumed he had arrived at an island in the East Indies. When he encountered the local indigenous people, the Taino tribe, he confidently labeled them Indians. He was off by thousands of miles, but his rigid adherence to his initial hypothesis birthed a cultural misnomer that stubbornly endured for centuries. Columbus would make 4 total voyages to the region. He died in 1506, fiercely denying that he had stumbled upon a new continent and insisting he had found a shortcut to Asia. The truth required a different explorer. A few years later, another Italian named Amerigo Vespucci sailed along the coast of South America. He surveyed the land and accurately identified that this territory was a new world, previously entirely unknown to Europeans. This is the 1507 Wald-Seemuller world map. A German mapmaker drafted this new, expansive view of the globe specifically to reflect and honor Vespucci's realization. Right here on the western landmass, the mapmaker permanently stamped the name America. Columbus was denied the ultimate geographical credit. History awarded the naming rights to the man who correctly identified the empirical reality in front of him over the man who refused to let go of his original theory. The myth of Columbus discovering an empty wilderness is exactly that, a myth. Millions of Native Americans had already been living across the continent for thousands of years before his ships ever arrived. He wasn't even the first European to make the crossing. The Viking explorer Leif Erikson had reached North America about 500 years earlier. When you tally it up, the scale of Columbus's failure is remarkable. He was wrong about the size of the Earth, wrong about his coordinates, and wrong about the people he met. Yet this specific voyage permanently merged the economies, ecosystems, and populations of the Old World and the Americas in a way previous Viking contacts never did. The modern, interconnected world began not through deliberate discovery, but as the unintentional byproduct of these geographic and mathematical errors.